Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Michael and welcome back to another brand new movie review, which I'm going to be reviewing one of my all-time favorite animated films, WALL-E. This movie has a lot of sentimental value to me for a number of reasons. The first being this was the first movie that I've seen in cinema with my father. I've obviously been to the cinema prior to this on numerous occasions with my mother, but with my father, it was the very first one that I remember going to see in cinema, and it was awesome. I loved every moment of this film as a kid, and so much so that I even had the DVD of WALL-E as a kid, as well as one of the WALL-E toys that my dad got me that year for Christmas. And yeah, if WALL-E was one of those films that I watched on repeat. Let's see, this was 2008, so I would have been 10 or 11 at the time. I think 11, if math is correct. I was born in 98. This came out in '08, so in around 10 to 11. Um, yeah, it was. It's one that as I said, I watched repeatedly as in around as a kid, and I watched the movie, the magician short that played before it, with the rabbit wanting carrots, which I found funny, and another one, another short, a 7 minute short that's on this, Bernie, because Bernie does show up in the movie, and we'll get to that because when I get to that scene, I'll of course review Bernie as well because it's a very funny short. So yeah, for a movie that's set at this current time, 782 years into the future, it's not necessarily post-apocalyptic, uh, but you know, it's gotten to the point where Earth is uninhabitable. There's so much trash strung about, and there's only one robot that is cleaning it, and that is WALL-E. And from the very beginning of this movie, you see that he has his own personality. He's very curious about a lot of our modern, wouldn't say modern stuff, but stuff that we are more accustomed to, like lighters, Rubik's Cubes, foons, foons? What the fuck is a foon? Fork and spoon, and then sporks. Because he's essentially a collector of all of these things through that personality, and he has a pet cockroach, which is essentially like a dog to WALL-E. He takes care of him. He has his own little place filled with a bunch of odds and absurdities, including two things that still work decades after they've been manufactured. The first one and the key plot of it is a movie. I don't know the name of the movie. I never learned the name of the movie. But he hooks it up. He puts it into a VCR, that's or a VHS player, and he's jerry rigged it to an iPod, and then he has something to enlarge the screen to watch the movie instead of that very very tiny iPod screen. And it's through that where through the music of that musical, that we learn that WALL-E wants to feel love, and he does that. This is a love story, and it's a fantastic love story as well. The other thing that I'm surprised works, you know, so many years into the future, several hundred years into the future, is an Atari 2600. Now, I never owned an Atari 2600. They came out in 77 till about 83, and there was a few others. But I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people who are watching this that I know that grew up with the 2600. And I watch people who grew up with the 2600. The Game Chasers and that, and to see one still working in so far into the future is astounding. Uh, and that's something I never caught on first on a lot of my viewings, because I never knew what an Atari was until I got into the retro video game scene, and that's when I learned what an Atari was. And I have since played a few Atari games, like Pac-Man, which is a terrible port of Pac-Man. I have played Pitfall. I played Space Invaders. I played Frogger, and all that stuff, as well as they still put out on different consoles now compilations of these old Atari games, and there's even a bunch of old Atari flashback consoles. But it's still wild to see, that reference. And this movie's chock full of references. We see, obviously it's a Pixar film, so the two main things that show up in this as references, of course, is the Pizza Planet truck, as well as A113, which was the studio that a lot of Pixar animators studied at. Um, so they've all, and I'm pretty sure every Pixar animated movie, I'm not too sure about the shorts, there's a bunch of hidden A113s. But it's more prominent in this movie. And after a day of following Wally, seeing him get up to what he gets up to on his day-to-day life, um, we get Eve, which, like Wally has in his own Ackerman, Eve is mainly just there to survey the environment, to see if it's habitable for the humans that are out in space to come home. And she does. She finds that because Wally found it whilst cutting up a fridge, and Wally finds a plant, and he, of course, being Wally, he's a collector of these things. He doesn't know what it is, and he keeps it. Would have been funny to have, kind of like an Indiana Jones reference, have like the plant under a one of Indiana Jones' hats. Would have been a nice reference, but hey, I don't know if this was the time when Disney owned Lucas or Indiana Jones to make that reference. But still, that's always what my as I've gotten older, that's just what my mind immediately goes to for that meme of Indiana Jones surviving a nuke in a metal fridge. There's been even Fallout, the video game Fallout, which is set in a post-apocalyptic world, has made reference to that. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. Eve shuts down for a couple of days. Wally obviously has instantly fallen in love with her, and they end up going up in space for Acts 2 and 3 of the movie, because it's only an hour and a half. And what I love about Wally is the fact that he instantly has an impact on a lot of people's lives. The first person he meets is a guy called John. Because we see these people, they're all obese, even obeser than I am, just in these chairs with screens right in front of them. They don't see what's around them. It's whatever's in the screen, and it's always riddled with ads. And I guess even nowadays you could say it's kind of like a social commentary of our day and age, with the amount of ads everywhere, and us, my generation specifically, always glued to their phones, and this is what could happen. There probably is, something that could be mentioned about that, but I'm not the right guy for that. But he does that to John. He does that for another woman. Pulls off the headrest visor, and these two instantly fall in love when they meet up later on, and they just take in what the ship has to offer, because this ship was only supposed to be out in space for 5 years for them to do their cleanup job, which turns out failed. Back in 2110, it failed, and so the president of, by and large, and of the world, because that's the whole thing. It's all one big corporation that's behind everything by and large. And the president sends a message, a code to the autopilot. If you find a plant, A113, destroy it. So that has me thinking, this planet, this ship, this flagship has been out in space for 700 years. We find out, it's been out there for 700 years. I wonder how many times an Eve has actually found a plant, brought it back, and for it to be just immediately destroyed. Because there's been several captains over those 700 years, and the argument could be there that it has happened, but because of that A113 programming, the autopilot just won't have it. So eventually, even Wally, through shenanigans and stuff, after saving the plant from being exploded, from being ejected from a escape pod, they immediately fly in and lock out Bernie. Yes, because now it's time to talk about the Bernie short, because like I said, it's just 7 minutes, and it's one that I absolutely love because Bernie goes through the ringer. I love his design. I love a lot of the designs of the robots in this movie, but to me, Bernie is my favorite design, and all he's really tasked to do is if one of the lights outside the ship gets damaged, he's to power it down, grab one of the light poles, bring it out, take off the old one, and put it on. And when that happens, he gets ready to put it down. He's humming some Mozart or Beethoven or one of those classical music pieces. And whilst he's waving at Wally as they're docking, that pole then floats out into space. And then he gets another one, and then just as he's about to finish, that's when the explosion happens of the escape pod. That jolts him, and he slices the pole. And so he rather defeatedly goes back in, grabs the last one that's there, and he goes out and he successfully puts it down. And then he gets trapped out there for the rest of the movie. And that's essentially the plot. And then of course, Wally and Eve eventually, as well as the captain, he turns autopilot from auto to manual, and they manage to put in the boot flower, but to get them to go back home. But during all of this, Wally has been massively damaged, and so as soon as they get back to Earth, Eve brings him straight to his home, fixes him up, powers him up, and he's forgotten his memories. And it's not until a kiss from Eve that he gets those memories back. And then the movie ends. And then in the after credits, not after credits, but as the credits are rolling for a good bit, it shows us how the humans are now going to reclaim the Earth and start from scratch, essentially. Lose all the weight that they've gained from being on that ship with the help of the robots, rebuild and reclaim their rightful home. And it's still, to me, a perfect film. From beginning to end, I have zero issues with Wally. I've never had an issue with this movie. I have yet to actually meet someone that does not like this movie, because it's a fantastic love story between Wally and Eve. And yes, there is the big environmental tone to the movie, that you could even argue is very prominent today, with how the environment has changed since this movie came out to now, and even 700 years from now, who knows what way the Earth will be. But it's a perfect film, and it is still definitely it is definitely my favorite Pixar film, and it deserves its place in my top 10 favorite movies of all time, which I've done early on this year. See, what else? What else is there to mention? Yeah, this is a movie that I hope and pray of two things. One, it does not get a sequel. It does not need a sequel. There's no point in having a sequel to this movie. It's a perfect story from beginning to end and does not need it. And the second one is a remake, a either live action or just in general remake. I seriously hope it does not happen because again, WALL-E does not need that. It is an amazing movie. I absolutely love it, and I hope, and touching wood, that it does not get a sequel and does not get a remake. And that has been my review for WALL-E. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'm not sure what review is next, but I will see you all when that one is. Yeah, I'll see you all next time.